Let's start the program off by reviewing the headlines of the week with Will Richmond, digital news editor at the Herald News. And Will, you're on the phone. Hello, how are you today?
I'm good, Donna. How's it going?
Okay, it's a slow summer months come sometimes news-wise, but we did have a few national news items that were big. We had the Orlando mass shootings in Florida that happened early Sunday that claimed the lives of 50 people, including the suspect and the alligator who snatched the child at Disney World and brought him into the swamp and drowned. He drowned. That was pretty sad. But locally here, with the Orlando shootings, Mayor Correa has decided to hold a remembrance for the victims on Saturday, June 18th. And then we had an incident with two Tiverton men, elderly men, correct? Why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, so bizarre story of two octogenarians who met up in a cemetery in Tiverton for unknown reasons. One man shot the other and then drove into Fall River, which resulted in a bit of a chase from Fall River police back into Tiverton. And then the officer involved shooting on a pretty nice looking neighborhood road in Tiverton overlooking Mount Hope Bay, in which the man was shot, killed by police. It's not sure exactly at this point if it was a Fall River police officer or Taunton officer whose bullets, or a combination of both, that may have actually been the fatal shot to this man. But police are still investigating the why behind these two men meeting up in the cemetery, and as well as the aspect of the officer-involved shooting.
It is a rather interesting story since they were 80 and 81 years old. They were in an argument. Is that what happened initially?
Yeah, it's not quite known exactly why the two men were meeting up. They agreed. One man, the man who was fatally shot initially, is a Kingston, Massachusetts man. So what would bring him from Massachusetts to Tiverton for this meeting in a cemetery, on the evening hours? Certainly odd circumstances. There's a lot to still find out about this, and you don't see a lot of situations in which two 80-year-old men go at it like this, and then the second one is shot dead by a police officer. So
I know one of the suspects had a criminal background that was sentenced to life in prison or something. I know the Herald News was reporting.
Yes, the man who was ultimately shot by police, his last name is Acquisto, was previously sentenced to life in prison in Rhode Island. He had been involved and was pled guilty, I believe, to manslaughter charges in the early 1980s from a 1970 case, and then was then further sentenced later on a sexual assault case in Rhode Island that led to his life sentence. He was then paroled in 2003, I believe, which led to his release, and you would think seemingly quiet life until this week.
Yeah, just interesting. I know the paper will be covering it as more details become available. There was also an accident that involved a motorcycle driver in the south end of Fall River. Why don't you tell us about the update on that? That's also another sad story that happened this week.
Yeah, unfortunately, there was a man riding his motorcycle, was stopped at a stoplight. Dump truck behind him. When the light turned green, the truck went a little sooner than the motorcycle did, striking the back of the motorcycle and knocking him off, resulting in that man's death. So, unfortunate circumstances there. The driver has been cited at this point, but police are continuing to investigate to determine if any further charges are warranted.
That's an interesting story, too, because initially your reporters had reported that the victim had serious injuries, but they were not life-threatening. And then we find out a day or so later that, yes, indeed, the man, he's 55 years old, did die, which is, things happen, and we don't know if the driver is going to be cited with anything else, though, right? You said.
Right. At this point, they're investigating to determine if there's any formal charges, but he has just been given a citation as of what we know now.
Yes, and again, with the weather being nice, there's a lot of motorcycles on the road, folks, so obviously drive carefully. And now we could talk a little bit about the school committee school superintendent search. That's coming to a close. There were initially 19 candidates. They interviewed 10, and we have 3 finalists now who are being interviewed. Today's Thursday, June 16th, and those 3 finalists will actually be interviewed in a public arena right here at BCC in C Building, the auditorium, room 111, and that happens tonight, Thursday, beginning at 5 o'clock, according to Mark Costa, who is the vice chair of the school committee. Why don't you give us a little background about what you know about the 3 candidates?
Sure. 3 candidates, all of them bring some urban education experience. One of them, people in Fall River may be most familiar with, is Matt Malone, who recently served as the Executive Secretary for Education under Deval Patrick at the end of his term as governor. So he's been in Fall River a number of times to visit schools here. So, well known across the state. Certainly, as many people in these positions do, he does have some history here with the Brockton School Department, where he did serve as superintendent prior to taking the state job. Some arguments with the school committee over issues such as residency. I guess Brockton has a residency requirement, though he says it was later determined he did meet that requirement. But at that point, it was determined, and he had left that town early before his contract expired. We also have a candidate who is the current superintendent in Framingham, Massachusetts, Dr. Stacy Scott. Again, strong urban experience, has a doctorate, I believe, in psychology. So some good qualifications there, but again, some questionable work history. He was found to serve as superintendent for about a year without his educator's license, which led to a no confidence vote from the teachers union in that city. So, some issues that will need to be questioned there. And then the third candidate may be the least known of the 3. His name is Charles Granson IV. He's currently a administrator at a program at Harvard. Has served in the school systems in Springfield, Massachusetts, and Poughkeepsie, New York. So he's sort of the, like I said, the one with the most unknown about him at this point. Even with those questions on some of the candidates, Mark Costa, as you mentioned, who served as the chairman of the search committee, said the search committee stands behind the selection of the 3 finalists. They were well aware of these histories related to those candidates, and feel that they're the best that could be sent to the full committee for consideration.
Yes, and I did have a chance, as I mentioned, to speak with Mark Costa this morning. He came in, and he was very honest about the backgrounds of the candidates, and he would really like the public to attend these public interviews, which are happening again at BCC on Thursday, June 16th. And once the finalist is picked, which may happen by the end of the fiscal year, which is June 30th, negotiations with that person will begin, and hopefully the person will be in place by the beginning of the fiscal year on July 1st, which would be nice, obviously, for the school department. So we'll have to see what pans out with that.
Absolutely.
All right, I know we probably have a quiet week coming up next week. The Charter Commission will be meeting on Monday to discuss the survey results. They had about 5,000 surveys from the public on what the public would like to see with the Charter Commission, and there are some events and activities coming up, so I'm sure the paper and as well as FRC Media News will be covering all of that. So we'll see you next week. Have a great week and just enjoy the nice weather we're having.
All right, sounds good, Donna.
Okay, you'll be talking to Keith next week. He'll be back. Thanks.